Julie, we said goodbye to Mary Dowling. And what a celebration that was in her life. So I'm thrilled to be back here in this congregation. And you should know something funny that happened this morning. At the same time that I am preaching, my friend Suzanne Ford is at the First Unitarian Church, who is speaking, and I talked with their pastor, and what we're trying to do now is help people hear transgender people's stories. So you've got to hear this. So I look at this young man who has come in and sitting in the front pew, and he's wonderfully gay. And so he said to me, you know, Janie, I love your work, and I love what you're doing, and so on. But he said, I thought Suzanne was here. And I said to him, if you hurry up, you can run and hear Suzanne at the First Unitarian Church. And so he did. So thank you so much for having me. Please, will you pray with me? Wonderful, loving God, we love your word. And we love this church. And we love being here. So let us listen into your word and what you might teach us. Once again, we thank you for this time. Amen. Amen. Well, I have a story. Can you hear me, David? Am I on?
Should be on.
Okay.
We'll crank it up.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Who do people say that I am? And who do you say that I am? And I want you to think about that a minute, because, you know, people say all kinds of things about us, don't they? But who do we talk to? Who's the one who really knows us? So, for instance, after I preach, and if my partner were here, I wouldn't say, what do they say? And she'd say to me, I'd say, what do you say? And she'd probably say, maybe an 8. So I'm thinking of, who do you talk to? So there was a little boy and a mother and an older brother. They went to Target, they went for Halloween, they went for costumes. And they were so excited. And the one older little boy races to the spider. He gets the Spider-Man outfit quickly. And then she's going up and down the aisles. Where is my little boy? And she said she looked, and down the Cinderella aisle was this little boy. And she went up to him and said, well, honey, what are you looking at? He said, oh, Mommy, do you see this crown here? And do you see this dress? And do you see these little heels here? And she said, yes. And I said, that's who I want to be. I want to be her. So the mother, kind of shocked, said, well, okay. So what she noticed about herself when she was leaving and putting the costumes on the table, as you do as you leave, she looked at the salesperson and she noticed that she had put the Spider-Man costume on top of the Cinderella costume. So she said, so they had a wonderful time, and her little boy loved the Cinderella outfit, and they went out and so on. And she said, so for the next several months, this happy little boy became solemn, became kind of morose. And one day, she said, she was sitting in the kitchen, and he came in and he put his arm around his mom, and he said, you know, Mom, I'm not the problem. The problem is you won't accept me as a little girl. Who do people say that we are? And who do you say I am, Mommy? Who am I? She said she grabbed him and held him and found other families that were going through the same thing. And she said, you should see him now. You should see her now. Who do you say that I am? Well, let's dive into these texts, biblical texts. Don't answer your text. Isaiah is one of these people that's kind of obnoxious in that he's a cheerleader for his people. And you know the kind, don't you? Maybe you have somebody like this in your church. Who do I know? Maybe her. But it's the one that says, even though, again, they were an empire, and this time it was Babylon. The last time it was Egypt. And so we get these stories of enslavement. Here they are enslaved again. And here they are coming out again of Babylon after 70 years. And he is leading them home. And when he gets home, the temple is ruined. All the buildings are gone. The people that were left there, you see, because this is what domination systems do. They take your brightest and your best, and they try to assimilate you into empire thinking. But some of them said, we're not staying. We want to go home. And so they go home. This is 2nd Isaiah, the one who says, God's for everybody. Everybody's invited. God is universally loving us. 3rd Isaiah, I'm sure they've talked to you about 3rd Isaiah, is the next prophet. And what he does is that he makes it real. And he says, well, if God is universally accepted, and we want to do this differently, because we understand what it's been like to be enslaved. And once you've been enslaved, you want to do it differently. And why? Because you want to do the right and just thing. And this is what Isaiah does. 3rd Isaiah says, this is what we're going to do. We're going to allow eunuchs into the temple. Now you have to know, friends, if you ever knew anything about this, that is blasphemous. And what he said is, not only are we going to invite them, but he uses the same word for cut off. He says, and they will never be cut off from the realm of God. Not only that, they will be better than the sons and daughters. Sons and daughters were the ones that carried your name. They will be better. And then he says, to make it worse, he says, and then we're going to invite those foreigners. Now, it's one thing to be nice to them. Have you heard this? Patronizing. Do you know the patronizing welcome? Do you know it? Well, he said, we're going to welcome them as full people in the temple. In the temple, we're going to ask foreigners. Because why? Because we know what domination systems do to us. Because empire food tastes so good to try and assimilate us. So what do? They do those things. They invite people they never thought they would invite. But if you don't get it that time, then the next time, let's go to the Roman Empire, which is the most violent empire that we know, next to ours. And so with that, as they're in the Roman Empire, God sends us somebody else. God sends us Jesus, right? Sends us this one, and who says, I'm a good Jew, I love Isaiah. I believe in the universal God. I believe in the God that welcomes everybody. And so with this, he has disciples. And they're his friends. Now, friends, you and I know it's not just men. Tell me we know that. It's men and women disciples. Because this is what Jesus did. He said, just like Isaiah, we're going to do it differently. So what we're going to do is we're going to invite women to be equal to us men. And we're going to create a community in which is interested in the disparity between the rich and the poor, that men and women will be equal, that, let's look who's in the prisons, he said. Oh, it's those people get out who have wealth. Oh, okay, so we're going to work on prison systems. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to invite the Samaritans to be our friends. Did you ever notice what he did? And everybody reads it and said, isn't this nice? There were 10 lepers. How come only one came back to say thank you when we healed them? And who was that? That was a Samaritan. People were furious with him. But there were those people who he visited. Why did he visit with the poor and the tax collectors? Why did he do that? Because he knew that they knew what was true, that they understood domination systems. Oak has just come back from the Civil Rights Museum in several different places, in Selma, Birmingham. So it was that kind of, Jesus was saying things like, unless you understand domination systems, first you go to the people that would most understand the system. And then you empower them. You invite them to like who they are. You invite them to become excited with who they are. You invite them to understand that they can make a difference and make a change. Now, there's nothing like that. In the church around it, I see this wonderful flag, by the way. In the church, when lesbian gay people came confessing, people were like those poor dears. We like them, they're in our pews, but heaven's sakes. But when lesbian and gay people began to say, hi, I'm like you, you're like me, things began to change. Why? Because when people are named less power and they begin to become empowered, something happens to them and that happens to everybody around them. Jesus knew strategy. So, when I used to go around the country and people would say this, Janie, you know, you're such a nice person. You know, and sometimes they'd say, when I preach, they'd say, well, you're not too bad. So this is what happened. The more I did this, the more I saw this. I said to them, I thank you that you love me, and I'm glad that you think I'm okay. But if you don't vote for me, you don't love me. It's when we finally say, it's when Medgar Evers said, and Dr. King said, you got to vote for me. Then I know you like me. You got to change a system, a domination system. And that's what Jesus was about. And he knew in going to Rome, he knew what would happen. And this is the great question. So when he said to the disciples, who do they say I am? And they said, oh, you're Elijah, or you're John the Baptist, or something. But he said, but look, Peter, look, Mary, who do you say I am? And they said, you're the Messiah. And he said, so what does that mean? Because you better know who you are. Because what we're about to do is change an empire. And we're going to do it by challenging the disparity between rich and poor. We're going to ask questions like, why are only those people in prison and not us? And as we move in today, how come 84% of our prisons are made up of people of color? You know,
This is what's happening. So again, if we don't get it, how about Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X? And I could name several women too, by the way. Fanny Hammer, some of these people. So this is what King said. He said, domination systems work like this. First of all, they don't want you to become conscious. They don't want to ask you to say why. What they do is this. First, they name. People in power name people of less power. And then they frame. And then they blame. And then they shame. And then they name. And then they kill. So what King did, as Jesus did, as Isaiah did, as Fannie Lou Hamer, as Rosa Parks, as so many others, is what they did is they said, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to do it differently. We're going to do it differently. And that's what we have been invited to do. The great thing about saying, who do you say I am? To us is that Jesus said, how are you doing on poverty? How are you doing on welcoming? How are you doing on changing prison systems? How are we doing in giving good food, good access? How are we doing? This is our job now. And this is why we come. Isn't this why we come to worship? It's not only to feel this beloved community, which is quite amazing, by the way, but we're loving one another enough and through so that we can go out and do what He's invited us to do. We're about liberation and freedom. Remember with Peter, they said, what's the matter with these people? Are they drunk? What? It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. And they seem to like one another. What is this? But they were all different voices, all different people. That's what we're about. Doing this work. Why? Because it's the right and just thing to do. So who do you talk to? I know you talk to each other. I know about that. Who's the one who says to you, okay, Oak, that was pretty good, but what about this? And this is His great gift. He said, center yourself. Because what happens is, and in this country right now, lies look like truth and truth look like lies. And so what Jesus says is you got to trust deep inside. Where is the realm of God? It is inside of us. We have access inside. But that means, and why He was so angry about making the temple a house of prayer, is because He knows to do this work, you've got to go way deep. You've got to be able to trust that deep voice inside that says, I love you for who you are. Now go and serve. That's our knowledge. It comes from the deepest place inside of us. So that's our job. I think it's the greatest job we could ever be given, isn't it? Is that we get to say no to domination systems, and then we're a part of, so how do we change it? And we're in it right now. We're in it right now. Who's going to get the best health care? Who's going to get the best food? It's got to be everybody. Because Jesus and Isaiah and King and all the people are saying to us, then do it. Do it. Who do you say I am? What an invitation. Amen.